Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's session, all about the power of group coaching. So, before we get started, I thought it'd be nice if people could share where they are joining us from today. So, I'm here in very murky Brighton. There's not much going on weather-wise. It is grey and meh today. How about you, Anna? Where are you joining us from?
Sunny Kent. Well, it was sunny. Well, it still is. There is a cloud now, but yes, it's been very sunny today.
And I am in sort of average weather-wise North London. And I'd really love everyone, this is a bit spontaneous, to, off the top of their head, put in the chat the first group that they feel that they are a sort of significant member of. So don't care if it's a work, personal, just stick in the chat a group that comes to mind when you feel that you're part of it. Just to see what comes up. Today, everyone, we're really lucky to have Anna with us. I think it's going to be a really informative conversation. The history is that I heard Anna talking on an association for coaching workshop all about group coaching, group facilitation, holding space for a group, and I just found it really illuminating. And I think a lot about group work. My mum is a group psychoanalytic therapist, so I have the benefit of her perspective on it as well. And we are, of course, hosting our own community now, and Simon and I are part of another community, as many of you are aware. And we are also on a course which has a lot of group work as part of it. And so I just wanted to get Anna on today so that we can do a deep dive into what it means to hold space for a group. And many of you listening in today will be coaches considering, if not already, running groups. And, you know, given that what we're all about is how you can market yourself, this conversation is to provide you with a sense of whether a group is a good way for you to work as a coach. But, you know, more relevant, I suppose, to what we do is how can you then share that with the world? What are the useful tips that Anna can offer us in terms of how to talk about group coaching and to reflect on how it's all going? So without any further ado, I would love to invite you, Anna, to maybe give us a bit of a kind of history, if you like, as to how you came to being an expert in this field.
Well, thank you for having me here, first of all, and I'm glad that you kind of joined the AC talk and enjoyed it to invite me here to talk to this group. I love groups, and I'm completely biased because I think it's one of the best ways of working with people, and there is so much energy in groups, there is so much learning in groups, even in groups that may not be as smooth as we expect. And how well it was by chance. The usual. The story. Excuse me. Is what a time to lose your voice, eh? The story actually was that I had done my coaching training. I did my training initially with the CTI, and I was invited. Well, I was invited. As someone said to me, "Oh, could you please, would you consider running a workshop for us?" And there was an organization, and I said, "Oh, that sounds really fascinating." Yes, of course I am. You know, excited at just finishing my training, and the rest is history. And I still work with that organization. I developed all their group coaching offer from that. And what I realized quite early on is that I got a lot of energy of working in groups. I went off and I did a lot of training around groups. There is very limited training in terms of group coaching, as probably you know, and other people in the call might know. There isn't really in-depth training for group coaches. So I went to elsewhere. So I did guest taught, I did some group analysis training, and I did everything that I could to actually understand groups. And my professional and self-development became about groups and how we are in groups. As your question was very interesting. what is the first group that comes to your mind that you belong to, and how we are in groups is very important when we want to work and coach in groups. And that is how it's been. So it's 15 years since that first day that I walked into that room, quite not knowing what to do, and then just fell in love with people, in a collective way. And it really is something. There's something magical about groups, and for coaches, is an opportunity to diversify what you do, to work differently, to work with different organisations, who perhaps won't be commissioning one-to-one, but they might consider group. I'm thinking I do a lot of work for charities, for example, and there is something emerging. I think is emerging recently is about organizations understanding the power of group coaching as opposed to teams. So what happens if an organization gets a bunch of people together from across, the different departments, the different geographies sometimes, to discuss a topic? It might be leadership, it might be inclusion, it might be hybrid working. Currently running a group on hybrid working, and it's an international organization with people from different continents and different countries, and they are there to really have a space to discuss how they're going to be working in the future with their teams, and that's very different than working at a team level, and it's very rich as well. There's a lot of learning in groups and a lot of sharing, and there is thankfully some more research is coming through, so we do have some of the empirical evidence about how groups can be really impactful for clients as well, and able to give clients something that the one-to-one might not be sufficient. It's just different. It's not. Although I'd like to say it's better because I love groups. I think it's just different. It's dyadic individual coaching and group coaching. They have different purposes, if you like, and their outcomes might be slightly different as well.
That's so interesting. It's making me think about, one of the most important things we want to focus on today is, we're actively trying to change the marketing conversation is what we say. And there's a lot of sort of toxic noise out there about how you can simply make loads more money if you sell your thing to lots of people at once. And I really want people to just stop and listen to what you're going to say about, let's look at it completely the other way around, in thinking, is group coaching the best way for me to deliver what I can deliver to the people that I want to serve? And if the answer is yes, it very much can be a really good way, then it makes sense to build a product that's a group coaching product, and then to talk about it, but from the place where the person you're actually serving and the outcome that you're going to be serving is relevant to the way in which you've designed the product. And, for yourself, and also so everyone else isn't just thinking you're trying to sell loads of the same thing to lots of people and save loads of time. And you spoke so convincingly on the workshop that I attended with you about how it is not just a case of doing the same thing for 10 people, and actually it's an appreciation of the dynamic that comes up, which you're speaking to, I think, when you're working with a group. So there's quite a bit in there that I'd love you to talk to. It's how to kind of redirect your intentions, but also maybe you can talk a bit more as well to what does come up in a group, and why does it make it different to doing one-to-one work?
It's so true, because sometimes we may be tempted just to don't get me wrong, your skills and understanding of coaching at one-to-one level, everything is really important that you bring into the groups. But what makes a group really effective as a way of working is the dynamic between the people in the group. We create a community. We talked about community in marketing. We talk about community in conversations. So as in a group coaching setting, you're holding that space for that group to come to life, and people interacting with one another at a deeper level. So you're not coaching individuals in a group. You're coaching the group as a collective, and individuals will benefit individually from that experience. So to give it an example, let's think about some of the inclusion work, inclusion in terms of leadership. if you're running a group coaching offer for an organization who are interested in improving inclusion, equity, and diversity, there are many different levels to kind of tackle that. If you think about policy, about expectations in the workplace, but getting people together to talk about their experience in their different departments, in their different roles of what inclusion might be like, or indeed exclusion, is a completely different thing. So if I have 8 people in that space and they are talking, and we created that safe, hopefully a safe environment that people can share. If someone shares candidly about their experience of not feeling included in their team, and another person shares their experience of what is it like not to know how to do this inclusion thing because they potentially worried about what they say, what they don't say, what is the right thing to say, what's the wrong thing to say, what is all this debate that makes people their fears around that inclusion agenda. You get 2 people together and more who would not have the same conversation if you had a one-to-one coaching. In one-to-one coaching, you may be exploring one person's perception and experience. Now, you're putting people together who potentially not have had an opportunity to have that conversation and share ideas. And then it's when you go, oh, wow, I never thought it that way, and understanding other people's world is something that's very powerful in groups. And then noticing that there is something potentially a shared amongst all of us. We all potentially have experienced fear of saying the wrong thing about about inclusion, about any topic. Actually being able to voice that to someone and other people in an organization is when people start to create this solutions together, because it's not a new policy that will get people thinking and behaving in a different way. It is about those human experiences that we might not have. And one of the feedback I've had in groups is about people having an opportunity to talk to people across an organization that they would never otherwise, because there might be a hierarchical. Apologies, the sun is really coming out, so if you can't see me, just wave if I become just a blob of I'm comparing in light and you can see the light. So if it's too much, let me know.
It's all good.
But it's the opportunity that someone, let's say a manager or a senior leader who is responsible for the policies in that organization, actually have a chat to someone who's is experiencing the impact of that policy, and have that conversation in a way that's not hierarchical, and that is productive. So group coaching then becomes something quite magical. Even if you're running it with people at the same level, let's say you're running it for leadership development, it's about me as an individual in the group. How do I impact you? How do I come across? How do you perceive me? How I perceive you? And have those conversations, and then I'll take it back to my work, the knowledge of that I didn't have before. We talk a lot about coaching being like a mirror. We mirror things back to your clients, and in groups there's a myriad mirrors that you just go, whoa. And it's exciting, and it's such a learning opportunity, and a kind of a level playing field. And as coaches, that's what you're providing. So I see group coaching as very rich experience, and each individual in that group coaching program will have their own personal goals, and we're all going to be leveraging the group to achieve those goals in terms of working out in our own level of self-awareness what is it that we need to do or want to do. And I think that is really, really magical. And there are the practicalities of it. Let's face it. You said, is the marketing is about how do we know the offer is suitable for the clients. Well, there is the pragmatic thing about cost. So group coaching is scalable, and it works out cheaper for the commissioner of that. of that group, and it's very impactful. So it's not just about the cost, but the shared narrative is one thing that we know that is really important in group coaching. So when you go into organizations, either as a corporate coach or as perhaps you work in communities in not-for-profit, what is the transformation that the client as the commissioner would like to see, and how can you support that? It's usually not one thing, is it? There's a kind of an offer, and there is usually something else going on. It's not just the coaching. They might be doing other work internally, and group coaching may be something that is just really powerful for them, that will make an impact on that change they want to see. If you think about changing one person at a time in an organization, let's stick to the inclusion agenda. You might be working with individuals, but when you work across a team, there is a ripple impact. They go back to their teams, they're sharing that with others. So there is a lot more impact than one person going back and sharing that with one team. So I'm hoping that more organizations will see the benefit of that as well.
And when you're working with people who are not in an organization but are kind of coming together to be in a group,
yes,
I'm interested to hear from you what it's like to actually market a course where you're selling it, and then how it feels, that kind of, I'm imagining quite an anxious stage of who's going to come and how am I going to facilitate the relationships and the sort of ritual around getting people to know each other. Interested in that sort of things, because hearing what you're saying about the commissioning is so interesting, but it feels like a whole different set of sort of thoughts and sort of ways to approach it from when you're having to sort of create something yourself, right?
Yes, it's a different set of skills perhaps, or thoughts that you need to have. So I need to put this blind down so I'm not blinded by the sun. Just apologies. We love the sun, don't we? We do love the sun, so I'm not complaining about the sun.
If anyone in the chat wants to ask anything, by the way, please don't hesitate. And also, I'm interested to know if anyone in the chat is currently running group. Maybe Anna would like to know also if anyone in the chat is currently running group coaching, is thinking about group coaching, is thinking about that from the sort of team's point of view and being commissioned to do that, or if they're looking to sell a course of coaching to what will be a group. It would be really nice to know if people in the chat have any thoughts on that.
Absolutely. And if you think about setting up your own group, then the first thing that you potentially be thinking about is what kind of topic is the topics that kind of make your heart sing, that the thing that you really consider yourself either fascinated by, or perhaps you have some experience and expertise in that particular area. So group coaching programs tend to have a theme. So it might be and again, I can't see any better way of, so when you talk about well-being, which is also the area of expertise that I did my research into group coaching and well-being, and the group itself, it becomes a catalyst for their well-being, because we all get together, we know the kind of relationships in that particular group. So that topic will be the thing you'll be thinking about, and what about that topic it's really conducive to having in groups, for example. So I'm thinking about career development or planning is something that will be really conducive, because we all share that people might be changing career or might be choosing a career, and that conversation about what does that feel like, and what are the things that are important to us, everything that you would be exploring the one-to-one, you adding the collective dimension to it. So I would definitely say to people in the call and others wanting to run their own groups, is thinking about what makes your heart sing, what you want to help people with, and is there a shared narrative that will benefit the clients in that group? How having more people in that environment would be really help, and I can number, because it is about sharing the story, it's about seeing different perspectives, and all of this is being confirmed by research. So perspectives how many perspectives you able to see at play in a group that you wouldn't have in a one-to-one. It is about normalizing some of our fears. Oh, I'm so glad everyone feels like this, because I thought it was just me who was really worried about this or couldn't do this or whatever. There is the incentive of the group, the motivation that people really cherish and kind of rally for one another. It's like, oh, have you done the thing that you said you're going to do? And go on, you can do this. There is that kind of support, which is a lot more than just you as a coach. There is a kind of a whole community there, for the relationships, the positive emotions that people feel in groups. And if it's a fun group, then there is all the kind of the laughter, the kind of the work comes in with a very in a very good environment that feels positive. So that is what I would suggest to people. And how we create that those relationships in the beginning, I think it's that is when I think your training and your self-awareness about yourself is really important, because you need to know how you impact a group yourself as a person. And by knowing that, you may know and you learn how to hold a group. You notice things about the people in the group, and then how is that affecting the way that you are working, and you can make choices about responding as opposed to reacting. So I'll give you an example. It might be, and how do you do this online, right? Different dynamics online. What do you notice about people? What perhaps you might be missing? But you may walk into a room full of people, and I'll talk about numbers if you want to, a little bit further. But perhaps someone who looks, I had this last week. I walked into a group, and there was one person who seemed to be very disengaged. Let's say the body language was looking down. The person was sat away from the others. So kind of all indications they might think, oh, what's going on here? And you kind of put that note on your head, like, I wonder. But I have to wonder, as opposed to making judgments about that person is not interested in what's happening here. They don't want to engage. What am I doing that might not actually being helpful for this person? What am I doing wrong? You could have all these different internal dialogues. And the training and the self-development work that you do is that you sit with it without any of that, because otherwise you will behave. You would be responding to those thoughts, and of course she came around in the end, and it was all kind of clear what was driving that initial behavior. But you give people a chance, because you're not being triggered by something because of the work that you do. So kind of sit with the group. And quite in a supportive way, and then make choices as you're doing one-to-one coaching, and you bring people in, right? Because it's very important they contract well at the beginning, and then you make it really clear that's their space for them, and you really give them that ownership of the work that they're doing, and It does work mostly. Overall, we do have some challenging groups, so but that's part of it as well. And challenging groups can also be very important for learning.
I'm really interested on that, actually, sort of how as coaches one learns with the coachees in a group. And Rob asks a question which relates to this too. What tools, resources and support would you recommend for an experienced one-to-one coach interested in group coaching? Which I think is a great question, because it touches on, yes, the kind of what are the kind of tangible resources that one might like to read, listen to, whatever, training. But then there's also, what do you need to do for yourself, mindful sort of self-compassion work when you're a very experienced one-to-one coach, so that you're not going into group coaching feeling like you're going to be absolutely fully prepared, because of course the experience is going to be quite different. So what resources or what thoughts do you have on how you can prepare yourself emotionally for it?
It's such a great question, and I'm thinking about resources, because the resource is you. That when you think about it, I'm thinking about external. Well, I'll give you some. There are perhaps some books that you can read around it, but I think the best thing you do is to experience groups yourself, and really ask yourself about what is it like to be in a group, and what are the things that you learn about yourself when you are in a group, and potentially experience different types of groups again, from different approaches and different methodologies, to really observe the human relationship in groups, which I think that it comes up when we talk about group dynamics. Is what happens if someone challenges someone else. How do I feel about that challenge? What do I think about conflict? What do I think about if I'm doing nothing in a group, and the group is doing the work, and I'm thinking, well, is there even a point of me being here? They seem to be doing so well without me. As a group coach, that's my happy place, when people can really take ownership for the process themselves. For others, it might be, and it wasn't always like that. I've been doing this for a very long time, so it's a kind of having those doubts. Am I doing the right thing? Should I be doing more of this? Should I be doing that, less of that? So I think that experience that yourself is really important, even as you go about your day-to-day interactions with people. And you may have meetings in groups, and you may be thinking, oh, how do I show up in these meetings? What are the things that people say that I go, oh dear, and I go, what happens to me when I have those interactions? What do I observe in terms of my emotion, my body language, and so on? I think that's really important. There are some books around group coaching, and unfortunately, that's my kind of my bugbear really. Is most of the resources, they put teams and coaching in the same breath. So you find if you Google, coaching in groups, you find coaching groups and teams. There isn't one book that is focused on just groups. And I'm determined to change that. I don't know how long it will take, but I'm definitely making some positive steps towards that. And I'll explain why, because it's very different. It is very different as a practitioner. And those of you on the call who have done both, please do challenge if you don't think it is. I think when I go into an organization and work with a team, they are a fully formed team with an existing dynamic. And I go into that as an external person. When I set up a group, we all starting from the same place. And it's a new feeling for all of us. We all may feeling a bit slightly anxious and nervous about being here. It's like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. Oh, I don't know if I like the look of that woman. Oh, is she going to, we're all going to have the same initial reaction that we have in groups. And there is theory to talk about what happens in the beginning of a group, in the middle, and the end. But we know that there is a certain amount of anxiety in the beginning of a group that we all be experiencing, yourself included as a coach. In a team, you go into an existing place, so it's very different. Now, in terms of practical resources, I think it's about what would bring the group together, as opposed to translating the one-to-one tools that you might use. So in a well-being scenario, for example, I use a lot of the existing coaching skills, but getting people to really come out and share their experience. So asking them about what the usual thing is, what does well-being mean to you, as you would in a one-to-one, but you do it in a group. And when you do it in a group, other people will respond, right? So you're not going from one person to another. What does it mean to you and to you and to you? You ask the question, and then someone will pick it up, and then that will go, and then you go where the energy of the group is, and listening at a scale as the ability to kind of pick up some of the patterns that you may be listening and giving it back to them. You may use a model, because you may have in your training, you may decide that you have an expertise. Let's say you use narrative coaching, and if those of you familiar with it, there are 4 different quadrants that you use. You could design your coaching around that, and say, in the first 2 sessions we're going to be focusing on this, the second and third and fourth and so on. So kind of giving it a framework. But it's a fine balance between using a framework and a tool and letting the group do the work, so you don't feel too restricted by that's what we're doing, because otherwise it becomes an agenda and it's not group coaching. Then it might be a facilitation, it might be a workshop, technically different, because you need more of the group to galvanize those relationships. If you're introducing too many things, it might be a workshop, which is fine, right? It's not right or wrong, it's just a different thing. So when you're designing those offers for your clients, you may be thinking, well, what might be good to be a workshop, or might be a group coaching offer. It may still be working with more than one person, but that will feel slightly different, and numbers would then be impacted, because you can have as many people for workshops as you like, but you can't have a really big group for group coaching, because you want to hear everybody's voice. And in a limited amount of time, you can't have 20 people, so the research shows that the optimal number might be between, actually the literature that we look says 7. I don't know why 7 sounds really interesting. So we tend to run groups between 6 and 9 or 6 and 10 max is really, Tracy, I'd say 8, but always recruit more, because people may drop out. And you don't want to kind of, if you have to end up with a triad, then it's not a group. Again, over recruit, just expect to lose a few people on the way. Sometimes they don't. So, but I'd say a number of 8, between 8 and 10. And the length depends on the length of sessions that you will be running and where you'll be running them. And when you do this virtually, there are some benefits as well, of people not having to go anywhere. It may be a benefit for some. It may be detrimental in others. As we know, there are other things that don't work quite so well. But there is the facility of working in a more dynamic way for people who would not otherwise spare the time. We tend to have shorter sessions for online than we would face-to-face. So my face-to-face sessions used to be 2.5 hours with a break. Again, you want to make sure that people feel it's worth their while to get somewhere to do the work. And 2.5 hours feels like, yes, it's worth our while, and then you make it exciting and so on. Online, I do 1.5 hours because I think that's the max really that people want to be focusing in a already over virtual day. And again, it's something you can contract with your groups. And I think that to be a group coaching program, it's got to have sessions, not just a one-off. Is there continuity? Is that when I get to the, let's say, session 5, and I can say to Simon, do you remember in week 1 when you said you were going to do that and you still haven't done it? And then Simon feels comfortable enough to answer that question, and other people might chip in and so on. So there is a kind of creating that history together. Or equally, you can say, oh, do you remember when so-and-so did that thing and that had an impact, and so on. So there is that kind of development of a group feeling the sense of togetherness, which I think is really helpful.
Yeah,
and being able to challenge. Yeah.
And I think what's come up for me is the difference, I think, just between a group and a workshop. I mean, it's a simple difference, but I think when a lot of people think of groups, like, so for example, if we were to say, right, are you going to run some group sessions? They would immediately flip to workshops and be like, yeah, I could run that. And then actually, I think you're right in the sense that, like, for me, it's interesting to consider that actually a group session involves a bit of releasing of your sort of leadership of that space, and that takes confidence. And I think that takes a lot of, if it's your first time doing it, there's a certain amount of trust in the process, there's a certain amount of trust in emergence. And so I think it's interesting that you were saying, like, try some group sessions of being in them and then take that to your own thing. But I think in terms of that transition from one-to-one to group, it's not just about, well, how do I do what I do for one-to-one but to more people, because that's a workshop. That's just saying, here is some training, because you can't do one-to-one element. You know what I mean? If you're just trying to remap one-to-one to many, then that's just workshops. But group, I think what's fascinating out of this is that the difference in the group is that you're almost taking a concept or an element of what you want and saying, here you go, everybody, let's all share this idea and see what emerges from that. And I think that's a really powerful flip in my thinking around it, definitely.
Yeah, there is a lot of trusting the process and trusting the group. And really, I verbalize that to people, say, I trust you to do the work. It's your space. I'll be here. I'll hold the space for you. We're going to be working together, and that's part of creating that alliance that we do as well in one-to-one. But firmly, it's your space. Do the work, and they do, and what emerges in groups tends to be more complex with the people involved, and that would have been in a one-to-one, because it would be just one person. So as I gave you some of the examples, and people are able to then observe others. And you know what, it's one of those things that sometimes, I don't know, it's just me, I love watching and observing people. And sometimes if I'm sitting in a meeting, in a regular meeting, and someone does something that I find, wow, that was beautiful. Perhaps it might be that they challenge someone, but in a really good way. And I'm thinking, oh, how did they do that? And I'm thinking, oh, I really love the way they've done that. And it's the same in groups. And maybe not sitting there having all this, but actually you're learning from others, and you're observing other people and picking up on things. It's like, oh, I like that idea, or I don't like that one, and so on. And you're making sense of it as we do when we interact with other people. And I think that is very rich.
I mean, this is gold dust, I think, because, this is exactly what I was hoping we were going to get out of you today, which is don't just think about multiplying it and then try and sell it based on like just selling it to loads of people, but own the ability to articulate the difference, as you've been saying. And I can't wait for your book or TED Talk or whatever it is that's going to evolve, where you give a really nice sort of clear guide in terms of a definition to all these things: group, workshop, one-to-one. So I hope, and I'm sure people here will be really enjoying thinking about what their thing is that they're actually designing or running, and how they can talk proactively to the people they're trying to sell it to, as to how that particular thing is going to benefit them. And also we talk about story, and I love the idea of as the coach doing the coaching, you are yourself emerging in that space as well. And the kind of transparency with which you might like to talk about that in the context of your own story, in having marketing conversations about why you're putting that particular group together, I think is fascinating. I'm wondering if people have got any. I mean, Michelle's got a question around the difference between in person and online. Can you talk maybe a bit more about maybe some mechanisms that you're actually employing to further frame spaces in different ways? You've talked about the timing, you've talked about numbers. I wonder if there's a numbers sort of nuance when it comes to the online offline thing as well.
Because I tend to work with fairly small groups, so I think 8 people, you can see all of them in your screen, and it's I think it's about, Michelle, there's something about contracting virtually that sometimes I perhaps am a bit more forceful in a way. So if people cannot have their cameras on, I would be very reluctant to let them in a group. I want to see them. If I have 5 people who have cameras on and 3 people with no cameras, it's just really odd. I've tried, believe me, it didn't work for me. And and if it doesn't work for me, then I think that other people might. I had feedback as well. People, oh, can we see them? We can't. It's awkward, and all the rest of it. So the technology needs to be working. I'm very, again, perhaps more directive in that contracting around distractions. If you want to be here, please be here. If you have other things to do, go and do other things. Really, in the workshop, that wouldn't be a problem, right? If someone is just typing away, looking at their emails and going here and picking up the phone, it wouldn't bother me. But in a group coaching situation, that we were there for each other. So it's the kind of that contracting is really important. Be mindful of your facial expressions. You tend to think that we can't see body language. Actually, can see more. It's a glimpse of, a very small change in your facial expression says it all. Whereas when you are in a face-to-face, you've got more. There's a lot more distraction visually. And we don't stare at someone like this for an hour and a half, do we? That would be really odd. You would be thinking, who is this person? Get me out of here. And so there is that to think about when you're doing that interaction virtually as well. And the fact that you do not have any eye contact with people, and you may not know what you don't know. For all you know, they might be very fidgety with their legs, but you don't see that. So again, assumptions that you could potentially make about people. So I think there is more of a checking in, that clarity, that you just want to really make sure that you understand what they're expressing and what they want to express. And again, I think is that sometimes there is that anxiety about engagement and participation, and I think that's letting the group work a little bit together, so you realize who are the people more vocal, and the ones that sit back a bit more, and don't rush that, which is easy sometimes, is our own anxiety to kind of, is everybody engaged in this, or should I kind of pull people in? That sometimes I think because of the medium of virtual, it can be more difficult because you have nothing else to go by. What else?
I was going to ask you, actually, there's another, because I'm just mindful of how many questions could possibly come up in the time, but there's some nice chunky questions about that are kind of maybe marketing related in the sense that, Tracy's asking, do you find that group coaching can lead on into follow-on one-to-one coaching? And also earlier Craig asked or mentioned that he's considering setting up group coaching but without also doing one-to-one. So interested in that sort of like traction, what happens. And then also I wonder if we can use the dirty pricing word, because I'm sure that people here will also be quite interested for you to revisit something you touched on earlier, which is around sort of how do you price. We talk about pricing for outcome as opposed to for time. And let's talk a little bit about that, and sort of get it out in the air, get it out the wash.
I think in terms of the combining group and one-to-one, you go back to what the needs and what is the offer. So I know from research that there would be a good benefit from some people who have been part of wellbeing group coaching programs, for some of them to follow up as a one-to-one, because they potentially they notice things that they want to work more intensely with one person, or they know that they want more of it, right? And it will happen, fortunately, often that the group finishes and people are like, oh, it's so enjoyable. Can we continue? No, we cannot continue. This is the beginning, middle, and end for a reason. And it's not an open group. And it may be that people may run open groups. Who might say that that's not the right thing to do? But for me, there is something about coaching as well as one-to-one, that there is a kind of a contracting for a period of time and galvanize around that. And then in the end, we see where does it go. So it may be that you can do that offer, or perhaps the organization might consider both. So I think there is that. I don't think that one is in lieu of the other. I think they work well together. And thinking about what is the outcome that is desirable, and the combination of both. So I think that's really, really fair to think about and to talk to people. I tend to if there is follow-up one-to-one, to pass it to other people and do the group. I think that there is something around, I know that person in a group, and I think a fresh perhaps approach to the one-to-one work might be helpful, with no preconceived ideas about that person. But that's not to say that that's not useful for others to do that work. In terms of pricing, it's again, it is the outcome, and it's usually about what is the outcome that, if you're working with organizations, right, like what is it that they're trying to achieve. And I think for me personally and professionally is how much work they're prepared to offer me. So the pricing for me is like, is this a one-off? Is this a 6-month engagement? Is this something that I know I'm going to have for the next few years, because they're committed to bringing this in to an organization? And then if so, how much budget they've got for that work. I would never sell group coaching on a session basis at all, because that wouldn't make any sense to me. I'll tell you how some people have. There are different ways, and then you can find your own way. So some people do the maths like this. I'm going to be running a 6 session program for 6 people, and they may want to price per person. So it's going to cost, for the whole program, it's going to cost, I don't know, £500 per person to be on that program. And they go back with that kind of maths, if you like. So it's a price per person. Others will do completely the opposite. They will price the program, and they say to the commission, that's how much it's going to cost you. And the maximum number of people you can put in this program is 8. So I have to say, I'm not very fond of the individual pricing. However, it does work if the person commissioning the work is thinking, oh, it's just, this per person, and they compare with training perhaps, or they compare with one-to-one coaching. So if an organization is paying, I don't know, £350 per session for a one-to-one, and you're offering a group coaching that is £500 per person for the whole program, they go like, what? However, and I'm really sorry of kind of caveating so much, but for some organizations, they also be thinking, why is it so cheap? So you've got to really that is when know your market comes to life. So the work I do with, so if I share a little bit of kind of personal work that I do. So if I do a lot of work with charities, and I get paid well. So I do pro bono work. Part of my practice is pro bono, has always been, but that's for values, my values, as opposed to the day-to-day work. So when you go to charities, you're trying to understand how much money they have available for that work. How does that fit in with their aims and objectives as charities? So I've worked with charities delivering support for people with long-term conditions. So they get money from their health service, or it might be from the lottery, to run something. And then you can have a really candid discussion and say, look, how much money do you have for this? Or you work with them and say, this is how much it's going to cost. How are you going to put that cost in your bid to get that money to deliver? So, and I would include in that not just the delivery, but all the prep that you need to do. Evaluation is really important, that you evaluate your offer. It's important across different settings, but the preparation that you put together, the contracting, getting how much work you're going to have to put in. Are you going to be booking the venues, or someone else is going to be doing it for you? Who's going to be doing the recruiting? So all of that you need to kind of factor in your pricing. Are you just going to walk in, or you have to do all of that work and then walking and deliver, and then you're going to be evaluating and so on? So as a program, you can see that there is a lot more than just the 6 delivery. And I would count a delivery a day, I would say. None of this hours, an hour and a half. What is that? That actually is half a day, at least half a day, because you don't sit 1 minute before an hour and a half, and you don't switch off a minute after the session ends. So it is at least a half a day's worth of your work, I would say, and more, that you might have to put in place. And so that's all kind of factored in. And for organizations, then I would really, if you think about what industry they are in, they might be able to so if you go and deliver a wellbeing program for them and you charge, I don't know, £6,000 for that program or £10,000 for that program, that might be exactly what they expect you to charge, because they're going to put a lot of people through that, and it's part of their wellbeing offer. And if you think about the outcome, so it's not hours or sessions. I think we can get really caught up in this hourly sessions thing, because it's not very helpful as well. And I would then put an evaluation as well into that, and I would tie in with what is it they want to get out of this and how we've achieved that or not, but really have that built in. To write a report at the end of it, you write a brief at the beginning, so all of that will be part of your pricing for that organization.
I have a question for you. So on a couple of courses that I have, a couple of group things that I've been on, there's been a kind of follow-up offering. So I'm really, really interested in all of what you're saying. And also I find it fascinating that you've decided to kind of hand over to others when it comes to any appetite for one-to-one work. I'd be interested in Craig's thoughts offline in terms of if you don't want to do one-to-one work, you can actually capitalise on talking about that in the way that you are, which is to say, no, this is a group offering and there are people I know who I can direct you to do that one-to-one work. And I feel like that's a really generous thing to be able to say. But I'm thinking about those follow-up offerings that people do like to sort of put in place when they've run a group. And it's not always the case that everybody wants to be part of that. So I'm imagining that you would suggest there's a significant amount, or there's a kind of pointed reshaping exercise that needs to be done. You can't just leave off from 8 people and have 4 people who want to carry on work and expect that you can just carry on in the same vein without any kind of framing or reflection of the fact that 4 people are just not there. And I just wondered if you could say just a couple of words more on that.
Yeah, so you have a different group then, haven't you? And I would be mindful of what is the follow-up offer for, and do we open up to other people and create a new group, or is the follow-up perhaps a series of workshops that you invite people on and they meet other people from other groups? I would be really kind of thoughtful about that. I quite like the begin, middle, and end, and different things happening after that. Even if it's workshops, I'm thinking about organizations that we chip in to create a whole host of different things for people. And it might be that you're running 3 different groups, and then there are monthly workshops. So I've worked in that way, that every month we had a workshop, and I had 3 groups running in tandem with the workshops, and then the people would get together once a month, or those who were available, and then it's a completely different thing, so it doesn't get muddled up. But if you continue the group work, then I would think, well, what is this other group for? And then we contract as another group for another number of sessions, as you would in one-to-one. When it happens that we work with someone for a number of sessions and I'd like to work a little bit more. And I would be very mindful, one of the key things about our ethical practices, that it don't create codependency. So if someone wants to be in the group for a very long time, I would be thinking, what's happening here, and how can I create offers that would then create that space for that person to go off and do it themselves and come back if need be, and so on. And I know people work differently, so I'm really, really respectful of other approaches.
This is incredibly valuable, I'm sure, for many people here. And on the subject of vulnerability, I wonder if you can just very briefly, because we are coming to time, which is amazing, talk a little bit around the sort of anxiety. So someone in the chat earlier, I can't actually remember who it was, said, yep, it was Tracy actually, who I think has now left, but she'll be able to watch this on repeat, that she started to promote a new group coaching program on leadership. She's got her first person sign up and she just needs 9 more. And that feeling of like, what's going to happen? How is this going to go? Like, that's the elephant in the room, is the anxiety that you feel when you've design this group offering, and it's not just like, yes, I have a client, it's like, but what about the other 9, and so
So well, my answer to Tracy is why 9? Perhaps you can just reduce the numbers, so reduce the anxiety. In terms of marketing, it might be for each person who signs, and you can create an offer. If you sign someone else, then you both get a little bit of discount, so you create a little bit of a, let people tell other people. And there is a something around launching, but softly, and holding the group and say, look, we've got a list of shared interest. What's it called when you kind of declare interest? You want to do this. You put a name on the list, and then you get in touch with people. Like, well, now we've got 6 people. I do that with my supervision offer that I keep, because it's not something that I promote in my business actively. And sometimes I get people say, "Oh, do you do supervision?" I said, "Yes, I do, but I've got a list. Put your name on the list, and then I'll tell you as and when I'm ready. And if you're still looking, then that's fine." Which is not what you want to do with your groups, mind you, but there is a way of getting people to refer each other. And also, if you get to a point that you've got 6 people, go with it. Go 8. Go with 6. Don't go with 2, because that's not good enough. But 5 or 6, just go with it. And that anxiety is, I think, is a normal anxiety when we do things. And you're thinking, are people going to sign up for it, and so on? But people will. And I think what you expect is the feedback from that first group, for people to go and tell others how helpful it was for them, and then you start to recruit for the next one. And give yourself time. I work very organically myself and plan things. There is a group running next year if you want to join, because I have different streams of work, so I don't do the group like every day. And I think that's also helpful, because it keeps me happy in that space, and work, as I said, with organizations, charities, and doing different things. But that anxiety is, Michelle, yes, absolutely. You could do that. And yes, if you hit a point, you've got 4 paying clients. However, be mindful of how you're going to disclose that information, because the last thing you want is someone telling someone that they are there for free, and someone else paid £2,000 to be there, and might resent the fact that they paid and someone else hasn't paid. So be mindful of that dynamic. But yes, and
I'm also thinking about, like, if someone's coming from a charity, what other dynamics are at play? Like, it might be a leadership situation where you might have a leader from a charity and 4 leaders from the corporate sector. And as long as there is transparency, I'm sure that actually most people would be quite understanding. But then there are some other dynamics at play, because it might be that 4 people are coming, it's more weighted to a particular industry. But I think Michelle's right. We have a friend also that did this recently, a friend of Simon and mine, who only had 6 people, and actually the outcome was that the group was absolutely amazing. And I think she's delighted that she didn't have the 8 that she thought she needed. And she also did offer a reduced rate as opposed to a free rate for someone in the charity sector, and it really worked. So just kind of speaking to Michelle's point there, but also yours, Anna.
Absolutely. I think you do. I like offering subsidized place for people. And I think that is really good. And I think there's something about planning the work, isn't it? Because if you're going to be running 6 groups, we are nearly 2022, right? In planning terms. So you can put it out there. You can say to people, I'll be running those groups. I don't know if you can do the seasons, the quarters, whatever that might be. And it start getting that traction now. So when it gets closer to the date, if you just have 4 people and you need 2 more, then you can put an offer out there, or you can reach out to the people signed up and say, we still have 2 places. Do you have anybody that you could recommend, and so on. Give yourself time, but that's how I work. Again, some people like the pressure of last minute offers and say sign up until whatever, but I quite like to plan and know more or less what I'm doing and how I'm going to combine all the different streams. And work, if you're planning to do this work for organizations, is a very long lead, and you have to start those conversations and tell people what you do, and they might understand, they might not understand it. and offer it. If you go to charities, you would need to understand a little bit of how charities work, and then you can tweak your offer to charities as well. Sometimes you can even offer to raise the funds for them by filling in an application to get a grant or something. There might be a local fund, those might be a local pot of money they can tap into. And all of that takes time, and potentially is a lot more time consuming than just, well, I don't know, because running a business is time consuming, isn't it? If you pick whichever way you're getting your clients from. So having that give yourself that time, it's really good. So Michelle,
yeah, everyone's reading Mark's comment.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm right at the beginning of my program, and I'm trying to build that traction. I've been giving places to people I work with outside of the coaching stuff. As a podcast producer, that means people who I'm working closely with to help ship their podcast. That gives them extra time with me to help develop and grow their show. And for me, it adds more bums on seats and helps me get in the groove of coaching. I love that. So it's a really nice sort of circular, creative approach to not just bums on seats for this course, not just one-to-one, whatever. It's kind of like, how am I helping a community of people? I like that. Yeah, nice. We've come to time. Can't believe it. Well, I can believe it, because I knew we were going to get loads of really useful, tangible, honest and reflective points from you, Anna. So thank you so much. We will share in the chat now where people can connect with you. I'm interested to know if people can work with you to develop their skills in becoming group coaches. Is that a course or group or workshop that you run?
Well, talking about planning, there will be next year. So I'm getting my offer accredited by the ICF at the moment. I want it to be something for those who need the professional development and the points for their accreditation. So I'm getting that accredited with the ICF. I'll probably accredit it with other coaching bodies as well. And I'll be offering something that is very specific for those wanting to work as group coaches and learn how to do all of this. But yes,
that reminds me, for those coaches in our audience who have gone down the less conventional route of becoming a coach and may not be getting conventional supervision, can you speak to sort of if there's another version of supervision that's relevant for people who want to run? And again, is that you?
Yes.
Opportunity to promote yourself here.
Yeah, no, very briefly. I think that supervision is important, even if you're not. I'm using the accreditation because it's just one way of also get the kind of seal of approval. That is a good course. But the key thing for me is that people have some experience, because it'd be really difficult to jump into groups without any experience. So that's one thing. Regarding supervision, I think supervisors in general can do a good job of supervising those working in groups. However, I'm completely biased because I do think that experience of groups is helpful to really understand the dynamics of groups. And I've certainly used supervisors with experience in groups in the past. Yes, I do that work. You will go to one of my lists, as I've mentioned very, very candidly, because I don't actively promote my supervision, but I do run supervision groups. So providing I've got enough people, I'll run them with absolutely pleasure. It's just thinking about, what is it that you would like to discuss in your supervision, and having someone who understands what is going on in a group, as opposed to not having that experience is very, very great. Well, I think.
I also just want to say that what you've done today has made me think about something that I haven't done before, which is to underpin what we say about niching. And that is to say that if you are able to think about who you want to serve and whether there's a kind of unifying theme, which will allow you to niche and therefore will inform your marketing, but also the reflection back to you and the energy you want to get. But I'm thinking also, like, when you're thinking about building a group, you have to think about what are the what are the unifying themes. So it just goes hand in hand so nicely with the whole approach to niching, I think.
And I think for me is that what do you want to do? What makes your heart sing in terms of working with groups? So I do a lot of wellbeing, I do a lot of leadership development, and because I really like working around self-awareness, and I like working organizations. I like challenges in general. and bringing those people together to think about things which perhaps are uncomfortable for them. And I enjoy doing that work in organizations, and I love the well-being because that's something that I've been doing for many years, but it's becoming a lot more apparent. And I also like to run the groups because then I really get that well-being means different things for different people, and everyone wins. And so find that, because once you can stick to that, people will get it. They will like, wow, yeah, Anna is the best person to run the well-being, then someone else might be better to do something else, right? And I don't want to be doing something else. I want to be doing this. So that's okay. And I think that's the niching becomes an easy thing then.
And your passion, I mean, it's all very well intellectualizing all this stuff, but what comes across so strongly, Anna, is how passionate you are about, how group can work so well. And thank you again so much for your time today.
More than welcome. And if anybody here has any other questions, just find me. I'm more than happy to share what I know, answer questions, any time. Please do reach out.
Thanks,
Excellent.
Anna.
Thank you very much.
Really great to see you. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.